Hello, everyone. This is Marlins Daily on the Fan Arch Network. I am Kurt Semder, and we are here once again helping to get you through the All-Star break as we prepare for the return of Marlins baseball later this week. The Fish will be taking on the Milwaukee Brewers on Friday, but until then, we've got some time to kill as we're making our way past the All-Star game that took place this week, and the Marlins on a break right now, so it seems like a good time to take a look at what they've been able to do so far through the first half of the season. Now, I mentioned earlier this week that we would be handing out some grades to the team for how they've done so far this year, and that's exactly what we're going to do today. And I want to start off, we're going to take this with hitting. We're going to go around the diamond more or less, not by position, but we'll break it down a little bit. And then pitching, and then we'll talk a little bit about the job that Clayton McCullough has done as manager. But let's start with the hitting, and let's start with the offense, because the Marlins, as we mentioned, have had a first half of the season that was kind of a tale of two halves. The first 2+ months of the season were not very good. The team found themselves, as we've mentioned, battling for last place in the National League East. And then once the month of June hit, the team completely turned things around, turned the corner, a historic month of June with 20 wins, and they just rolled on from there. And they find themselves now, as we head into the second half of the season, sitting in playoff position, sitting in the third wild card in the National League, and they are within striking distance of the division as well, something that I don't think anybody really saw coming, as we've mentioned, in the first 2 months of the season. So how did we get here, and how's this team doing? And I think you can expect these grades to be maybe a little bit lower than you might think, just based off, we got to take into account, those first 2 months of the season. So let's start on the infield, and that's where I want to begin, because, when you talk about the infield for the Marlins right now, they look very similar, but at the same time different, than what they were at the start of the year. On the corners, that's where they struggle right now. At first base, and they started the season, Connor Norby got the start on opening day. They were trying out some different players there, seeing what exactly fit and what worked. And for the longest time, it just really wasn't working. And I give Clayton McCullough credit and the team credit for shifting gears here, going to players like Liam Hicks, going to Kyle Stowers, to see if that would work at first base, and they've definitely gotten more offensive production out of the position by making those changes. Stowers, yeah, there are moments where he kind of looks like he's making it up on the fly, or he's a little bit lost out there, but he hasn't really hurt the team too much at the position. He's played it pretty well, so I think he's doing a pretty good job. Over at third base, Javier Sanoa got off to a slow start, but he has really picked it up here in the last 6 weeks. So third base seems to be doing okay, although, again, those are two positions I'd love to see the team improve at the trade deadline if possible. Up the middle, though, is really where they stand out. You really can't ask for much more out of these two guys, Xavier Edwards and Otto Lopez. We've talked about both of them many, many times here on the show. Otto Lopez, an all-star campaign in the first half, when leading the league in batting average and leading the league in hits and multi-hit games. He's just been fantastic. You can count on him not just to get a hit, or he will more likely get two at least, and extra base hits on top of that. Yes, he struggled in the last series, but let's hope that was just a blip on the radar. Xavier Edwards, who I think is going to end up, or should end up, in the outfield at some point, has been everything they expected him to be this season, just a steady force there in the middle of the lineup, and sometimes batting towards the top of the lineup as well, kind of setting the plate for some of the other batters. So good job by them. Their grades definitely helped pull this one up. I'm giving the infield a B+ for the first half of the season. Again, they had some struggles in the corners to start the year that kind of pulled the grade down, but the guys up the middle have been so good that I think it pulls the grade up. When you go behind the plate, Augusto Ramirez started the season off as the catcher. He is in the minors right now, and what you've seen behind the plate, Liam Hicks has taken some of the reps behind the plate, but Joe Mack has really stepped up, and you're starting to see a young player really develop and come into his own so far. His offense has improved seemingly with each week. He is managing this pitching staff very well, which is definitely always a challenge for a young catcher. And right now, I'm going to give the catching position a B-. just because, again, I think they've been able to get more out of the position than they intended and what they thought. And I think the sky is the limit for these guys. So I'm going to give them a B minus. The outfield now, I'm giving them a C. And that's because, you look at how they started the year, and right now, you know, Heriberto Hernandez has started the season off in left field. He's mostly coming off the bench and playing where needed, and he's going to see some more time due to some injuries now. He's been doing okay. Some pretty big hits for the team, yes, but as far as a consistency standpoint goes, not exactly what you were looking for. The starting right fielder to start the year was Austin Slater, because Owen Casey was DHing, and Slater's in Tampa Bay right now, so he's long gone. Griffin Conine had some injuries that he had to deal with. He's back in there now. He's starting in left field for the most part, and he has shown you flashes that he could be a really special player. Got to cut down on the strikeouts, got to cut down on the bad swings, but when he squares it up, I mean, he's really, really something special to watch. So I think he really will help them in the second half. And Owen Casey, who's hurt right now, definitely want to get him back in there. Hopefully his leg injury heals quickly. The problem in the outfield lies in our friend, the center fielder, Jacob Marcy, who has regressed in the first half of the season and is just not giving them the production that they need. He's playing good defense out there. Yes, I will give him that, but you need a little bit more from him than hitting under 200. And he seemingly, even while the team played well, every time he came up in a big spot, just didn't seem to come through. I mean, you can count on one hand the amount of times he came through with a hit. It was mostly just not getting the job done. And you need that from him, and they wanted that from him. They expected that at the start of the season. Marcy has struggled, and I think center field, whether it's Xavier Edwards moving to the outfield or whether it is through a trade, is got to be a position that they're looking at the deadline. So I'm giving the outfield a C right now, B plus for the infield, C for the outfield, B minus for the catching. All in all, though, not bad. You look at their offense overall for the first half of the season. I mean, they're middle of the road in runs, in RBI, in walks, good stuff there. They lead the league in triples. They lead the league. They're tied for second in stolen bases, tied for fifth in doubles, seventh in hits. They don't strike out a lot. They get a lot of walks. Average is high. OPS is high. Everything trending in the right direction. So I think offensively, and we talk about their first half grades, overall on offense, I'm going to give them a B right now because I think they can get better. And I think with the right moves and the right trades, they can just improve from that. But hey, based off how the first 2 months went, if I told you they were going to get a B at the All-Star break, I think you would have thought I was nuts. But I think the B is a good call here for them to start the year for the offense. Now, let's move over to the pitching, and this is a part for the Marlins that has always been a strength for the franchise. They always seem to have really good pitchers, and this year is no different. You start about their starting pitching, which I'm going to give an A minus to, because at the top of this rotation has been just fantastic. You can't ask for more from Max Meyer. He was pretty much perfect until the last week of the first half of the season, and really establishing himself as he has pitched more innings and he has pitched in more games than he has in his career up to this point. But he has been a revelation at the top of that rotation, pretty much taking over the spot as the team's ace at the moment, although you may still say Sandy Alcantara with the experience he has and with the pedigree that he has is still the team's ace, and he very well may be. But between the two of them, they've really carried this team and got them back on track through with just some very good, consistent pitching through the month of June and into July. Yes, Sandy got off to a little bit of a rough start, and that really fueled a lot of the trade rumors. But he has been just so good, and that's why the front office has basically made it known that they're not looking to move him here at the deadline, and hopefully that continues to be the case. Yuri Perez came back from an injury, has pitched very, very well since then. Almost had a perfect game. Jansen Junk just came back from the injured list and looked pretty good. Hopefully they get more good stuff out of him. And as for that fifth spot, it's been, Tyler Phillips or a bullpen game or whatever it may be. Your fifth spot in the rotation, you're not necessarily looking for too much production. You're just looking for innings, and you're looking for somebody who's going to keep you in games, and they've gotten that out of that spot. When they traded Edward Cabrera at the start of the season, you probably were thinking, pitching was going to be a problem. Their starting pitching has been very, very good. And I think they could still afford to add somebody at the deadline, but I'm going to give them an A- right now because overall, I mean, they're top 10 in ERA, nearly top 10 in strikeouts, top 10 in WHIP. They don't give up a lot of hits. They're doing very well, and they're doing what they need to do with an offense that is putting up runs and sometimes only putting up 4 or 5 a game. So you can't have one of those games where you just give up 4 or 5 runs and you're out of it early. So pitching staff, starting pitching specifically, been very, very good. The bullpen, meanwhile, I'm giving them a B minus, mostly due to the performance of their closer. Pete Fairbanks. You never want to see your closer with an ERA that starts with the number 6, and that's what he's got right now. Yes, he hasn't blown too many saves, but he also doesn't have a ton of saves either. So he's not exactly giving them what they were hoping for here. But that's not to say he can't. He has shown it in the past, and he can turn this thing around, and I hope he does for the Marlins' sake. But the rest of the bullpen has been really, really good. John King's been great, finds himself on the injured list right now. Hopefully won't be for too long. Same thing goes for Anthony Bender. Michael Peterson has been really great find for them in this bullpen. We talk about guys who you can just put into a game and can get both righties and lefties out, and he is one of those guys, a hard thrower. He pitches a lot, and I don't think they're going to burn him out this season, but he is somebody that they've come to count on. Calvin Fauché got off to a very good start, but struggled late here in the first half. I'm hoping that he wasn't overused too early on, and hopefully he has what it takes in the second half, and he can kind of refine himself here. So, bullpen's been pretty good. Their team ERA is 7th in baseball, which is very good too. So there's a reason why a lot of the Marlins bullpen arms have been mentioned in trade rumors. And that is obviously because a lot of them have been very effective this year. And there are some guys I didn't even name here who have been having pretty good first halves. But, right now, bullpen, let's go, I'll bump them up to a B. I'm going to bump them up to a B. So we'll say that the pitching staff overall is a B+. And that's pretty good for them. They've been really getting the job done. And as I mentioned, keeping the team in the game, that's what you want. And in some cases, just shutting down opposing offenses and some pretty impressive offenses along the way here this season. Now, let's move behind the bench and let's move to Clayton McCullough, who, I don't think a lot of people had big expectations for him with this team, especially this year. And it takes a special manager to pull a team out from a tailspin. This team was in a tailspin through those first 2 months of the season. We saw a very similar situation unfolding in the division with the New York Mets, with a team that was had a much higher payroll, much bigger star power, but the records were the same. And Carlos Mendoza eventually lost his job because he couldn't pull them out of it. And Clayton McCullough pulled the Marlins out of this. He kept the team together. He gave them opportunities to succeed. He made changes when changes needed to be made rather than waiting to see if someone would come out of something. He kind of forced the issue in a couple of occasions, whether you talk about making the change at first base or finding places to play Javier Sanoa, wherever that may be, or just, giving some of these younger players a chance to shine, and it's come up big for them. And, for Clayton McCullough, I'm giving him a B, and the reason I'm giving him a B is because for everything good that he has done, he still sometimes falls on analytics a little too much for my liking, and I know that's the way of the game right now, but, I wish sometimes that he would just trust his gut, because I think his gut is a good one, and if he does that more in the second half, I think it'll really benefit the team. I'm not necessarily saying let pitchers throw 9 innings all the time. I'm not saying to, overuse anybody but there are situations, the Yuri Perez perfect game comes into play, like I was talking about before, the kind of thing that you might want to, trust your gut on. And he has done a great job, like I said, of putting the guys in a position to succeed and putting them in a position where they're now in the middle of a playoff race as we start the second half of the season. So let's give Clayton a B. And, you see right now, like, above average grades for the entire team pretty much right here. And that's really where I think they are, because the Marlins have had an above average first half of the season. They've really overachieved at this point. And I think that if they can continue this along and continue to overachieve in a National League that, to be frank, doesn't have, they've got a couple of big teams at the top, but after that, it's wide open. There's no reason to think that if they can keep this going, the Marlins can't make the playoffs. And we'll see what happens in the second half, but I really think that everything is falling into place right now, and if these guys can just keep this going and pick it up right where they left off in the second half, and we'll talk a little bit about that a little bit more tomorrow, but if they can do that, we could be talking about playoff baseball here for the Marlins, which would be, pretty exciting stuff, to say the least. So before we go today, I want to just talk a little bit about our comment section in our last video. I asked everybody to kind of go into our trivia section, and our trivia question still going on. We'll give you the answer to that tomorrow. I'll remind everybody of our trivia question right now. The Marlins have had 4 All-Stars 3 times in their history, in 2016, in 2005, and in 2004. How many of those players can you name? Don't look it up. Don't use your phone. Try to think about it. It's more fun that way. Trust me. There were 11 players that we're looking for here. One player made it to both of those. Made it twice. You can probably figure out which one that is. But let me know what you think here. Put in the comments section your guesses, and we'll reveal the answer on tomorrow's show. But I want to talk about one of our listeners or viewers here. Thomas Joseph, 348088, thanks so much for subscribing and for chiming in on our video this week. And, Thomas said we were talking about a lot of different things, but Thomas says, as of regards to the Marlins and the rest of the season, he says, the strength of the remaining schedule and the emerging vibe might lend us to reevaluate the Marlins' chances of a wild card spot. Will they break the 80-win wall? I'm figuring not, but we always hope, which will result in a near miss for the playoffs. And there's the pessimism, and I don't blame Thomas. I don't blame you. I get it. Believe me, I understand. A good month or 2 good months does not make a season, the same way 2 bad months don't make a season. And yes, the Marlins have put themselves in a position here where a bad month or 2 will be a letdown because you're starting to think that this team can make a run. And I do think they'll break the 80-win wall. They've already got over 50 wins this season. I do think they will do that. Will that be enough to get them into the playoffs? We'll see. But again, you mentioned the strength of schedule is something that should be talked about a little bit because, yes, a lot of people have pointed to the fact that the Marlins played a weak schedule through their winning streak of June, but doesn't necessarily mean that they're not going to keep that going when the competition gets harder. They built up a lot of confidence here, and they're hoping that can continue when they play against a little bit tougher competition in some big division games, too, against teams like Atlanta and Philadelphia in the second half. I do hope that they do make the playoffs, and again, I think if they can break that 80-win barrier, if they can get to 85 wins, 86 wins, we'll be talking about them as a wild card team. Thomas also talked about something we talked about in the last show, which was the All-Star game. He mentioned, he agrees that baseball's is the best of all of the four All-Star games, although he says it's the best of terrible wastes of time. And you know what? You might be right. You might be right there. He says he skips the whole week, and the week off would be more value for players, and maybe it would be. Maybe it would be. But for the fans, I think it's important for some fans who still love the All-Star game to get a chance to see their favorite players. And he also said get rid of interleague play too, which is something I talked about, and he agrees with me on that, and I agree with you on that. So Thomas, thank you. And by the way, great logo for your profile. It's not the fish logo here behind me that we all know and love, but the Montreal Expo logo is one of the classic greats. Love to see that there. So thanks again for the comments, and a reminder, just comment here on your video. Let me know what you think about how the Marlins are doing. Answer our trivia question. We'll read those comments, of course, right here on the show. So we've got a lot to talk about this week with one more day here before the season kicks back into gear in the second half. We're going to look ahead to the second half and how the Marlins are going to start things off, taking on the Brewers, and see how they can get off to a good start and pick up right where they left off. So we got a lot to talk about still here on Marlins Daily. Remember to like and subscribe right here on YouTube, and remember to comment. Let me know what you think of the show. We'll be talking to you a little bit more tomorrow here on Marlins Daily on YouTube. Thanks so much for listening, and again, we'll see you tomorrow.